Okay.
So, first question, should we always use more powerful speech communication patterns? What situations might warrant more powerless speech?
No, we shouldn't use more powerful speech communication patterns all the time.
Mhm.
Um, in situations that are like more casual, or like when you're working with a group and you're working on like the social dimension, you should probably use more powerless speech because it's just less formal and more like it's just the speech pattern you would use to like talk to friends, I guess.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Because power or powerful speech too, like especially like in when you're working in a group, it could just be, all the other group members could just be like negatively affected by that and stuff, which wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
help your group in the long run. So.
Yeah, because if you use powerful speech all the time, you kind of like just seem like a robot. And it's good to like use powerful speech when you're working on like the task dimension of like a project, but again, just like not all the time.
Okay, the second one. Do you think that there are different expectations for the use of powerful versus powerless speech based on gender? Why or how? What are potential consequences for violating these expectations? Me personally, I feel like rather than having it be based on gender, it's just more so personality of the person regardless of their gender, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I took a sociology class on sex and gender, and we learned about powerful and powerless speech and how it relates to gender. And um, when like powerful and powerless speech was like being researched, like the first theory was that like men can only use powerful speech because they're leaders and they have high ranking jobs and stuff. But then during the second wave of the feminist movement, when women were entering the workforce,
Mm-hmm.
they like the second theory was like, oh well, women can use it if they're at work, but like in other situations they can't because they're women or whatever.
Yeah.
But like the most recent theory just says like anyone regardless of gender can use both powerful and powerless speech.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends on like the context and like who you're communicating with. And yeah,
That is awesome. That was very insightful and stuff. So that kind of, I think that makes sense and stuff. I mean, especially more so like in our past history and stuff, now it's like obviously like we try to strive for equality between the two, but in some situations it's still not there, but it's better than like how it was and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you think that a cultural preference for individualism versus collectivism makes a difference in perspectives of powerful versus powerless speech? Why or how? I personally think so. I feel like people who are, or cultures who tend to have a more individualistic tend to use more powerful speech, while people who, or cultures that are collective or like collectivism or whatever, tend to use powerless speech just because they want like individualism, they want what's best for that one person regardless of everything, and vice versa for that rest. Do you want to move to the next one?
Sure. So it says, discuss your thoughts on the Stanford Prison experiment or the Milgram experiment. How does the experiment tell us about power and our roles? What can we take away from this?
Um, I thought the Stanford prison experiment was pretty interesting because you have all these college kids who are I mean, although they're different, they're in the same place at the same time doing the same thing, so they're pretty similar for the most part. And then it was random. They didn't know whether they were going to be a guard or a prisoner. It was chosen at random. And then they were they depending on what they were meant to be, like prisoner or a guard, would kind of, especially the guards, definitely fit into that type of role and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the more, if you have, like, if or even just an example, like that job, like being a prisoner or a guard, like obviously the guard is going to feel like he has more power in his roles because he's in charge of taking care of these prisoners and making sure they do the right thing or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For the Milgram experiment, I think it speaks to like how when people are given a certain role, that power that they're given kind of goes to their head. And since they are given this job to do, they will fulfill that job so that they're not seen as like,
Weak.
what am I trying to say? They're not seen as like they're doing a bad job as being like the teacher or whatever it was in the experiment. And they put like the experiment above like the well-being of the learner.
Right.
Yeah.
Number 5, optional. Anything else related to the chapter that you'd like to discuss with your group? I'm fine personally, but did you guys have any questions or other things you'd like to talk about?
Not really.
Yeah, and then so we have to summarize to one of the discussion questions or one or two important takeaways from your group discussion. What do you guys want to do? Answer one of the questions or just one or two important takeaways?
I think one or two important takeaways.
Yeah.
One can be that using powerful and powerless speech is like entirely context dependent, and like anyone can use either speech pattern.
Yeah. Either.
And then we could say something about like the Stanford prison experiment and how when people are given like a role to fulfill, they will do that, and even if that means that someone else
Means someone, yeah, if it means someone else is gonna take the consequences of it. Or
mm-hmm.
Perfect.
Is that good?
Yeah. And then, so we're good, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, stop recording.